Have Social Security and Medicare looming, would you consider looking at those programs, age of eligibility,
Absolutely.
cost of living, put it all on the table?
The answer is absolutely, you have to. I mean, it's one of the things that my, the political advisors say to me is, whoa, don't touch that third. Look, the American people aren't stupid. It's a real simple proposition. Social Security is not the hard one to solve. Medicare, that is the gorilla in the room. And you've got to put all of it on the table.
Everything.
Everything. You've got to.
People all over this country say that is nuts. That's nuts. Anybody in the Congress who believes in cutting these life-important benefits, we're going to give them a political choice they can't refuse. And that is, if they vote to cut Social Security, they may well not be returning to Washington. Thank you all very much.
That was an old clip of Joe Biden actually talking about cutting Social Security and Medicare. And today we actually want to talk about the Democratic Party and what started the rightward shift of the Democratic Party. Some people say definitely Bill Clinton in the 90s is when the rightward shift happens. Some people say Jimmy Carter was the first neoliberal Democrat. But our guest today says it gets even before that, the rightward shift starts. Before we introduce our guest, I want to bring on my co-host, my homie, my dog, Pascal Robert.
Brother Jason, what's going on, my man?
How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Doing well. Looking forward to today's show. This is
I'm looking forward to today's show because before I bring this person on, I want him to know that he was a guest early on in the show, and it was just me in the kitchen with Phoenix in a high chair because I had to feed him while I did the show. And he also introduced me to a lot of people, one of which has become a real deal friend. And he's always trying to help me and help the show grow. He's a legitimate good dude. I have nothing but great things to say about him. So the fact that he does amazing work is just icing on the cake. I'd like to introduce Professor Harvey J Kaye.
Thank you. I thought I was helping Phoenix when I was helping out the family.
Phoenix was just hollering. I told him you were going to be here. I said, Phoenix, Harvey's here. He's going to be here. So Harvey introduced me to Napoleon the Legend, and we did a show.
Napoleon, we're in constant contact, Napoleon and I, yeah.
That introduction has led to a friendship where Napoleon and I talk. I mean, I got sent CDs. I mean,
he never sent me CDs.
Because, well, Harvey, but real talk, that means a lot to me. There's other people you've actually connected me with, but I won't name names, but Harvey's a real deal.
You had one of my former students on, right?
I had Tegan on, who I've also talked to. I was this close to surprising you with trying to bring her on, but I figured it was too last minute to try to get her to rearrange the schedule.
When she was my student, she just helped me out in the sense that when I knew she was in the room, I felt good. She was a good kid.
She's coming back on. I just got to get my schedule right. And because she finally finished her 12-part series. One of Harvey's students, because again, he's always trying to shout out people that he respects. And I will also add, Harvey was retweeting this show when no one was, because he's like, oh, you had Cedric Johnson on. I like that guy. And he retweeted that out. So again, got to give props. And one of his
too many shows called This Is Revolution.
No. I got to tell you at some point off air about how I got to do an NPR interview because they got the wrong show.
I love it.
But we wanted to talk today about the Democratic Party. And I remember one day we were back and forth. If it wasn't on Twitter, I might have been poking at you on either Jacqueline or Nomiki Khan's show, because you do a ton of shows.
Yeah.
And you had said something about a rightward shift in the Democratic Party happening in the 70s.
Yeah.
with McGovern?
Well, it isn't that McGovern would represent exactly a rightward shift, is that there were people inside the McGovern camp.
Gotcha.
Specifically, and I will name names, Gary Hart in particular. And for all I know, Bill Clinton was part of that same crew. But Gary Hart, who aspired to be president of the United States, I believe was either running or helping to run the McGovern campaign. And he, after they lost, he went off to run for the Senate himself in Colorado. And he had a stump speech, which was called The End of the New Deal. He was trying to break the Democratic Party's ties to the New Deal tradition. And then you get Jimmy Carter, who we did mention. And the Carter family was not known as friends of Roosevelt in all those years of the 30s and 40s and 50s and so on. And Jimmy Carter kind of postured as a liberal when he ran in 76 in order to win the Democratic nomination. But his 4-year presidency revealed the degree to which he was actually the pioneer of neoliberalism in office. I mean that sincerely.
Serious anti-labor policies.
Yeah, well, he abandoned. Well, you know, he actually, in some ways, he sort of paved the way for Reagan, and he also represented the kind of politics that Bill Clinton then made his own, and that is turning his back on labor, turning his back on the environmental movement, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and the consumer movement of Ralph Nader, by the way, as well.
You know, Adolph Reed has a statement that he makes that causes the ire of some, liberal Democrats on the left. He says that we got more from Richard Nixon than any of the Democrats that came after him.
Yeah, and let us explain. For a start, think about it this way. First thing to remember is Nixon was a part of the greatest generation of the 30s and 40s and 50s. Now, and let's be clear. You and I, I'm sure, have no affection for Richard Nixon.
No.
Whatsoever. But it is the case that he knew his generation, and he knew damn well that as president, he could not turn his back on the Roosevelt legacy. And in fact, I believe he spent more money under his presidency on combating poverty than actually Johnson had during the course of the 60s. First of all. Second of all, he's the man who signed basically he signed the bill creating the Environmental Protection Agency and the bill creating the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Correct.
He also proposed national health care.
That's true.
He also proposed, it was something like a minimum
universal basic income. He talked about a universal basic income as well.
Right. And it wasn't the Andrew Yang model. It was more the case of there would be a minimal income for families. Right?
Wow.
Have I got that right?
That's correct. It was something to that effect.
Yeah.
So would your position be that the neoliberal turn is really a bipartisan consensus that comes out of the condition of political economy that America was in coming out of the 60s, with various things like the end of the Bretton Woods paradigm, Nixon's taking us off the gold standard, that with the rising competition globally of foreign powers, America realized, and don't forget the oil situation with the oil embargo, that this was a kind of realpolitik in terms of looking at where the post-civil rights political economy was going, and this was kind of a bipartisan reality that we had to move to basically disrupting the New Deal Civil Rights Coalition.
Well, I think it starts before that kind of crisis becomes full blown. Okay, there's no question about the fact that Japan and Germany had recovered from the devastation of World War II, and they represented real competition for American industry, including the automobile industry. There was something underway called the profit squeeze. And the profit squeeze meant that company heads, CEOs and COOs, had to figure out how to maximize profits in the face of that competition. And rather than innovate effectively, I think their first initiative was to go after labor, to reduce the cost of labor, and also in many ways to invest in overseas operations in cheap labor regions. So here's the thing. In 1970, I believe it was, David Rockefeller, who was then the head of the Chase Manhattan Bank, gave a speech to fellow bankers and basically said capitalism is under siege. Okay. And we need to respond effectively. In 1971, Lewis Powell, a lawyer from Virginia, who I believe actually was favorable towards civil rights, I could be wrong on that, but decidedly hostile to the assault on capitalism as he saw it. He issued a memorandum to the Chamber of U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and he laid out the war that he felt capitalism was enduring from labor, the environmentalists, across the board, every single possible group. And by the way, it was a secret memorandum. 2 weeks later, he was nominated to the Supreme Court by Richard Nixon, and he was appointed. But then the real punchline to all of that is that David Rockefeller, whose name I already mentioned, he organized with the help of Zbigniew Brzezinski, an organization called the Trilateral Commission, which I think was made up of, it was like 150 members, all of whom were from the political and economic elites of Western Europe, the United States, and Japan. And they commissioned a report, which was basically a report from those three regions on the state of democracy. They said there was a crisis of democracy. And what they meant by the crisis of democracy wasn't that you need more democracy. It was that democracy was a threat to capital. It was an excess of democracy is the way they reported it. So and in the chapter on the United States, Samuel P. Huntington, who was the professor of political science, very prominent figure, rising figure at Harvard University and in the political science profession, he specifically named labor, well, the public employees unions, the poor people's movement, a host, basically the demands on the part of people of color, the women's movement, the student movement. He laid out all of the progressive movements that emerged from the 60s as a threat, saying it's possible you can have too much democracy, and we have to tamp down on it. We have to temper it. In other words, we have to suppress the democratic imperative that these people are feeling, this democratic impulse. And that was issued as the Trilateral Commission report on the crisis of democracy. There was nothing secret about it even. It was published for the world, well, for the American market in particular, by New York University Press. It wasn't published in some pamphlet form distributed to just business leaders. It was a major university press. In fact, I have a copy right here if people are interested. I keep it nearby. It's kind of gone through it's falling apart. If I opened it up, it'll all fall apart. This was the report, The Crisis of Democracy. Report on the governability. Okay. So who was there? And by the way, now we get to the punchline of the punchline. David Rockefeller and Brzezinski cultivated one particular political figure, the governor of Georgia named James Earl Carter. I believe that was it. James Carter, Jimmy Carter. I can't remember what his middle name was, but Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was they bolstered by the way, two presidents came out of the Trilateral Commission. The first one was Jimmy Carter, and the second one was George H.W. Bush. Okay.
Wow.
And Jimmy Carter was basically David Rockefeller's candidate. They bolstered him. They pushed him forward. He won the Democratic nomination in 1976. And to my mind, one of the worst presidents, absolutely one of the worst. Okay. And then Bush was not even a Reaganite. He was a guy who actually said that Reagan's ideas about economics were basically voodoo economics back in the 1970s. Yeah. But Reagan wanted to appeal to a broader Republican audience. He made him George H.W. Bush his vice presidential candidate. They won in 1970, they won in 1980, and they won again in 1984. And Bush himself wins in 1978, beating Dukakis. The point is that Jimmy Carter, as president, not only turned his back on labor and the environmental movement, he also deregulated the transportation industry and the financial sector in ways that Reagan would deregulate even more aggressively in the 1980s. He paved the way for Ronald Reagan. So if you look at the course of events during the 70s, you can see the building up, the Pascal, basically to answer your question, is that the real champions of neoliberalism were not really the Republicans, okay? I mean, they literally got on the shoulders of the Democrats, Jimmy Carter in particular, and in the name of conservatism, pursued neoliberalism. And you can go right down the line: Carter, Reagan, Bush to some extent, but more significantly, Bill Clinton, Bush II, right? And Barack Obama ultimately. It's neoliberalism, 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 neoliberalism. And I'm sure this will come up. Among their Senate champions was Joe Biden, who was, of course, a neoliberal from the get-go while he was in the U.S. Senate. That clip that you showed at the beginning reveals the degree to which he was willing to cut into Social Security and Medicare.
And that's kind of been his MO from the jump. I want to say shout out to the Left Flank Vets for rating the show. If you guys don't know, every Tuesday morning, Pascal and I wake Pascal up to do it, do a show with Marcus, 12 p.m.
Wait. You wake him up. He's in the East. You're in the West. How could you wake him up?
Because the motherfucker sleeps in.
I'm usually up by that time.
I do know one thing, Jason. You're what? There were two people I know on the West Coast who I'm friends with. Both of them are early risers, and you're one of those two.
Oh,
okay. Because I see it when I wake up, which is like 6 or 5:30 even, and I'll tweet something. I know you're there, and I think I once said to you, "What are you doing up?" And you said Phoenix needed to be,
Yeah, I got it. I'm either dealing with him or I'm one of them people. I think I told you this. My dad would wake up early in the morning before all of us, and one day I woke up early to try to see what the fuck he was doing, and he was just grouchy in the morning. He was like, "I'm grouchy, but I could be grouchy alone, and I'm not fucking with anybody." So I was like, "Oh, that's all right. Then I'm gonna be an asshole by myself." Hate liking Harvey's tweets. But thank you.
At least someone's out there. At least I know someone's out there.
Oh, yes. So thank you, Left Flank Vets, and everybody that's tuning in that just got here. Harvey J Kaye, if you don't know, he's on everybody's show. He's written how many books? Is it 10 books?
Okay, I think I've written 9 and edited 9, or 10 and 9. It's like 18, I think. No, yeah, I've written 9, and I think it's edited 9. It's something like that. And
this book, I was actually taking some notes in for today, and
great, good, because that's not the most recent, but a year ago that came out. Take Hold of Our History, and I have a particular affection for that because it's kind of like the speeches and essays of the Obama early Trump years. Yeah.
And we were talking about somebody said say hi to Brazil. Oh, what's up, Brazil? If you know anything about me, you know that I had a ton of fun touring in Sao Paulo and Florianopolis in 2019, and I was very sad I couldn't do it last year.
That's cool. I did two 2-hour interviews with Brazilian intellectuals one was in August and the other one was in November, December. Mm-hmm. And, there's a left that, with Bolsonaro, that's a left that really has they're confronting real
shit. Real shit. And that's what kind of woke me up when I was out there. And we'll get back on topic. I just do want to bring this up. When I was out there, it was when Lula was locked up, and I was out there when the story broke, the Glenn Greenwald Intercept story about Sergio Moro and being in cahoots with the actual prosecutor. And the feeling that people had that he was about to get free was pretty interesting. Also, I was in Curitiba where he was locked up. There actually is people that wake up. He's free now. Woke up in the morning to go visit him in prison. It was an interesting vibe. I saw
you down there playing music.
Hell yeah.
Okay, I'm just double checking.
Oh hell yeah, yeah. We were down there playing on some underground shit. There was a beautiful mural to Marielle Franco, who was murdered. She was the black gay activist that was kind of doing Black Lives Matter stuff before there was even a Black Lives Matter. So the politics down there are really interesting. I wasn't really hip to all of the politics down there, but going down there and being kind of submersed in the hood and seeing it in real life was very, very eye-opening.
Well, what was interesting to me, and since Pascal brought up before we went on, Michael Brooks and my developing friendship with Adolf Reed, is that when I did these 2 sets of interviews in Brazil, which I think are on YouTube. If you want, I can give you the links at some point.
You don't speak Portuguese too, do you?
No, I just speak Spanish, or at least I used to be fluent in Spanish, and I always regretted my wife speaks Portuguese, but I don't. But when I was interviewing with them, it was amazing to me how many of them knew of and listened to Michael Brooks' show.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really something.
Yeah.
Okay, just thought I'd drop that.
No, he was on. Yeah, he was on some Lula shit. No one was covering Lula.
He was the guy who put Lula really into the brains of the left, the minds of the left. I think that's my sense of it.
No one. Him and Democracy Now! Are the only people I saw do any.
Yeah,
Lula.
Democracy Now! I rarely get to see Democracy Now! I don't know what it is. Maybe I was in the classroom all the time. I don't know.
Do you know Amy Goodman? I feel like you know Amy Goodman.
No, and I always thought she would have asked me on the show, but never came about.
Weird. She's a hater.
Maybe she doesn't like history.
She's an elitist. What can we say?
What can we say? I was just noticing. This is a pretty active chat now.
The chat is
the chat is alive.
The chat is on fire because the Left Flank Vets is a pretty large show. They're a group of former post 9/11 combat vets that are all like Marxists. And so they have a show that we do every Saturday. One of their guys comes on our show, and then every Tuesday we go on their show, and we just kind of talk shit and talk politics. They definitely do more electoral politics stuff than we do, but they're very, very good people, and I've had them on the show.
Are there members down in Florida by any chance? I say that because somebody's bound to answer me if I say that.
No,
because I've worked with a group. This goes back to 2005 when my Thomas Paine and the Promise of America book came out, and I was contacted by a group of progressive vets. They're not Marxists, but they are progressive in Sarasota, Florida, and they call themselves Veterans for Common Sense.
Oh, I'll ask.
Named after Paine's pamphlet, and they asked if I. It's funny enough. They said, "Do you give public?" They saw me on television, and they said, "Do you give public talks?" And I said, "Oh yeah, no, sure." And they said, "How much do you get paid?" And I said, "How much have you got?" You know. So the president of the group, they were all about 5 years older than I. They were Vietnam era, and I was Vietnam era, but I was younger than they were. And he said, "Well, we tried to contact a retired general, but the general wanted 50,000. They wanted a progressive figures that had to be not Ramsey Clark. What was his name? Wesley Clark." And I said, 50,000, I don't get, you know, I can tell you that.
Who's the guy?
I said, just give me enough money for me and my wife to get to Sarasota because they wanted me to come and speak at Thomas Paine's birthday, which is late January. And the prospect of getting to Florida in late January and getting out of Wisconsin for a weekend was delicious. So we started this thing every year, and it's still going on. They just did it virtually. A Thomas Paine birthday party. We did a Thomas Paine lecture the first year, and every year after they do a Thomas Paine birthday party. They get about 150 people, and they give an award, and everybody eats and drinks and dines, and people should know about them. Sorry, I just
no, it's going to go off, and that's what we do. We actually respond to the chat. Jean Bajlan is in the chat. Shout out to me and Jean Bajlan. He says you're the second person to do Michael Brooks' show, non-New Yorker.
Well, I did grow up in the New York area. How's that? Okay.
You're far.
And I was a Brooklyn family, by the way. But I grew up on the Hudson side of the Jersey side of the Hudson.
You're like Pascal, and I give Pascal a ton of shit because Pascal is never going to lose his New York accent. And you're the same way.
Well, mine's flattened out because of the time in England and Latin America and stuff. But I did want to say regarding Michael is that there was a funny thing. I shouldn't tell this story, but Michael used to say, "Oh, I really want you to come on the show." And I was willing to do Majority Report by phone or whatever technology was that time. But I said to Michael, no, you and I need to do it in studio. You and I need to meet and do it in studio. So we had this thing that whenever I came to New York, which was frequently, my mom was still alive and we would go every 6 weeks, it seemed. But the deal was whenever I was in New York, I would try to come on he would set it up for me to come on his show. And so, we became pretty good friends, Michael and I, needless to say.
Well, he said nothing but good things about you on air.
Yeah.
And I second those things.
And
Harvey's
I have
even
to
nice
say,
to my
for
mom
years,
about it.
I knew of Adolf Reed, and I hope Adolf knew of me. And it was because of Michael that Adolf and I got to know each other a little bit. So.
Oh, side note, Harvey, I'm doing a show with Leisha on Monday.
Oh, nice. Very nice. I just had an exchange with her today because I texted a picture of Michael and me today in the studio. Sometimes you run across a picture and you just want to, send it out. So we talk every few weeks, Leisha and I.
She's cool people. So
absolutely.
We're going to be more fun. It's going to be more fun. I'll talk about it when we're done with this show. But back to the show. You want to keep talking new right, neoliberalism, that kind of stuff? The whole thing. We had all these clips.
Because here's the question. Look, can I just pose the question back to you?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, unreservedly, I wanted Biden to beat Trump. Unreservedly, I wanted Bernie Sanders to beat them all. Okay. Unreservedly, and that didn't happen. But it was imperative that Donald Trump be removed from office. As I put it almost a year ago, well, whenever it was that Bernie got shoved aside by Barack Obama and that crowd, as I put it, Biden was deplorable, but Trump was despicable, or some version of that, okay? So I was waiting to see, and by the way, there's no doubt that Biden moved left during the campaign, even if it wasn't an effectively left movement. In other words, he definitely moved left. He nodded to the left. And they probably would have won seats in the House, and they would have done a hell of a lot better if Biden had actually embraced Medicare for all, things like, it just would have been the case. And people can argue with me about that, but I'm absolutely sure of it, because in 2016, Bernie would have beaten Trump, period. Okay.
I think so.
So now I thought, okay, I watched the inaugural address. I watched him name the nominees for his cabinet. The nominees for his cabinet I had very mixed feelings about, especially when Neera Tanden was to be the Office of Management and Budget Director. But in any case, the inaugural address was not very good. It was rather ineffective. But he issued a series of executive orders in the course of the next, 3 days, like 30 in the course of a few days, which implied a commitment to groups such as labor and others that kind of surprised me, his determination to show that he was a friend. The problem has been now is that we're more than 4 weeks. They always talk about the 100 days ever since FDR's great 100 days. Mm-hmm. And here we are. How many days are we since? Is it like 35 days? I'm losing track of the days, but it's more than a month in, right? Yes. It might be even close to 5 weeks. And what have we seen? We saw a failed effort to impeach, which they should, what'd you expect the way they handle these things, the Democrats. And even worse is that today, as you may have heard, the parliamentarian has decided that the $15 an hour minimum wage change cannot be considered, cannot come in under the reconciliation, apparently, something like that. I mean, I want to see Biden do it. Here's what I want to see Biden do. I want to see him literally shed his neoliberal attachments. And I want him to say, okay, this is what I believe. If I were a warehouse worker, I would join a union. I want him to just say it. Okay. Let that be his signal. Okay. I want him to say this pandemic requires universal health care in this country. We're going to go for universal health care. If not immediately, this is now going to be an aspiration. Moreover, in other words, I'd like him to lay out very aggressively, very progressively, very social democratically, an agenda which will capture the imagination of working Americans and go forward. Okay. And Bernie's at off, at the budget committee in the Senate. Let's go for it.
Why would we even remotely think that's possible when we understand that Joe Biden was Bill Clinton before Bill Clinton? Joe Biden has represented every single politically duplicitous action the Democratic Party has taken almost in my whole lifetime. And I was born in 1968. I don't understand why there's any remote pretense that Joe Biden would be inclined in any way whatsoever to even pretend to be left. He can't on saying, I beat the socialists. Okay. He's fundamentally a transactional centrist Democrat he's credit card Jim Crow Joe Biden. He's been that way his whole life. I can't even fathom why anyone on the left thought, besides the fact that the discussion about Trump being a fascist, why they would be expecting to get anything.
Okay, I'll tell you. I have only one possible explanation, maybe two.
Somebody says Pascal ain't gonna want to hear Harvey's positiveness.
The first one is this. What is he, 78?
Something like that. Yeah.
78.
He's a one-term president. Right?
Yes.
There's no question about that.
We know that he remembers what we remember. In 1994, Bill Clinton was smashed in the midterm elections. Smashed. It was all over. It didn't faze Bill Clinton probably terribly because he could pursue his neoliberal agenda all the more effectively with Republican support. Hold on. Second, he knows the story because he was in the Obama administration. In 2010, Obama got smashed. The Democrats got smashed. Democrats all across the country got smashed. Now, does Joe Biden want to be number 3? Does he want to be in 2022 the guy who gets smashed, or does he want to be the guy who actually does not lose the House and maybe even picks up a little more support in both houses? What does he want to do? Okay. That's what it comes down to. By the way, Pascal, just so you know, I didn't say I believe he will do it. I said I want to hear him say these things. But it doesn't. But your attitude is to say, "Fuck, it ain't going to happen."
Well, let me say this.
My attitude is that there are people who can make him do it.
Mm-hmm. Who can make him do it? The only people who can make him do it are the banksters and the financial interests that run the puppets in his administration.
Well, the first thing to remember is that actually Wall Street wants him to do some of the stuff that surprisingly we want him to do. Mm-hmm. He's not. They want him to spend money. Number one.
Yeah, they want him to spend money in the same way the second CARES Act bill did, which is basically give a ton of billions of dollars of largesse to the financial services industry in corporate America.
But Biden has to face what neither Clinton nor Obama faced. Bernie Sanders is the chair of the budget committee.
What does that mean, Harvey?
What does that mean? It means, basically speaking, the way in which the bill comes out of the budget committee, if it's expenditures, Bernie Sanders has his finger in it. And if Bernie Sanders is ready to give major gifts to the billionaires, I'll join you in your cynical ranks.
I think that this notion that somehow because Bernie Sanders has this position in this particular position in the Senate, and that Joe Biden is going to find his moment of victory in American history after being almost 50 years in politics, fundamentally neglects the fact that these guys, that the purpose of the Democratic Party is to neutralize the left flank of progressives in this country and coalesce with the right to implement policies that are fundamentally at the service of finance capital. When Joe Biden was in the Obama administration, as WikiLeaks exposed, he was working at the behest of Citibank, not at the behest of people. How do we know that Obama wasn't more interested in coalescing with the Republicans instead of having to deal with Democrats in the House or in the Senate with a congressional majority? I don't put it above Democrats deciding to say, hey, we're going to lose the House anyway. We'll just work. I mean, Biden is already demonstrating that he wants to work with Republicans or coming down the middle, which, by the way, you never hear Republicans say. So I'm befuddled by this concept that there's a chance that Joe Biden is going to be some kind of bellwether of progressivism by any stretch of the imagination.
Can I say this? Can I say this
yes,
in
it's
the,
your
in the
show,
middle
go
of this conversation? I don't think it's that Biden is going to wake up one morning and understand that he needs to do the right thing. And that was one of my initial questions with the show to Harvey. As I was reminded in the chat from Jean Bajlan last week, we had Jean Bajlan and some of his homies on Kuba Brzezinski, who worked with the State Department and military industrial complex, and another Maria. I can't pronounce her last name. I don't want to fuck it up. Anyway, we were talking foreign policy, and somehow Biden came up in the discussion because we were talking about Biden. What is the new administration going to do in the Middle East? And Kuba said that Joe Biden is cancer, Donald Trump is Ebola. Which one do you want? And Jean said, bring that up to Harvey and see what he says.
Well, first of all, I don't like medical analogies in politics. Let me make that clear, okay? Okay. Biological analogies are generally used by fascists, so I generally stay away from that, okay? Just for the record.
Fair enough.
But look, I'm going to make something clear, okay? I have moments of fantasy, but it usually doesn't involve losing my head. Okay. It just flashes of fantasy. But it's also the case that I do everything in my power, and I'm not trying to be nasty about it. I do everything in my power not to be cynical. The moment I go cynical, I might as well just go out, as the great historian E.P. Thompson says, just go tend my garden out back. Okay. Because then it doesn't matter, because there is no struggle if there is no possibility. And the fact is that I have seen over these years victories by the left, okay, which by most accounts shouldn't have happened. And look, the squad is growing. Number one.
Oh my God, the squad? Is that where we're putting?
Wait, hold on a second. Let me make something clear. Are you a fan of Jimmy Dore? Just tell me now.
No.
That's it, because if you are, I don't even want to bother to have the conversation. Okay?
No, this is not the Dore zone.
Okay. Because I do think that, look, I mean, I'm 71 right now, okay? And I've never before seen socialists get elected to Congress, okay?
That's
and
fair.
I've seen it. Number one. Number two, I there's a lot hanging on this. I think that what's going on at the Amazon warehouse and unionization effort is significant. I think that the teachers who struck in West Virginia,
yes,
and in Arkansas and Oklahoma, and out in LA, and especially in Chicago, okay, tell us that there are things stirring in this country. I think the Fight for 15, which has been underway for some years, tells us something. I think that the Moral Monday movement that Reverend Barber launched in North Carolina, and he now heads the Poor People's Movement, I think that tells us something. I don't say that victories prevailed on any of those occasions. I also will get more current. I think the Black Lives Matter explosion and movement and the taking to the streets last summer told us something. Mm-hmm. Now, the fact that if we fail to make the most of these things is not because Joe Biden is president or not. It's because we failed to make something of it. Okay? But it is also the case that if Joe Biden is immovable, then for the next 4 years, politics is a waste of time, and so is movement politics. Nothing changes without both a movement and elected officials who can be moved. That's the story. The old debate about electoralism versus movement politics is a bullshit question. Okay, just ask Martin Luther King how far civil rights would have gone, okay, if it wasn't for the fact that Johnson was ready to make it happen. And so too Walter Reuther and even George Meany. Okay. The fact is, you cannot do, it's called legislation. They ain't going to be, if there's no legislation, you're not going to have the change.
I mean, I think that's one of the big questions I was trying to ask initially with this show is how far can Biden move with a left that doesn't seem to be very unified. And I had a show recently with the great Mike Davis, who's unfortunately in some ill health. But battling through that ill health, I asked him, I said, do you think Donald Trump succeeded where Bernie Sanders failed as far as forming a third party, or putting together the groundwork for a third party that actually might have some political movement? And he said no. He goes, I think the one problem was that there was no working class movements on a national level that Sanders was doing. Everything seemed to be kind of electoral. He goes, but I don't think Bernie Sanders did anything wrong other than, he didn't even really say that was wrong. What's interesting to me is I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong here, there's a lot of people in the chat that the age range runs the gamut. I feel like people.
And by the way, let me just say something to Riverman. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I did not say Bernie will save us, the squad will save us. What I'm saying is they need to be empowered to push Biden. Look, somebody else said class struggle doesn't happen in the Democratic Party. It sure, of course it doesn't happen in the Democratic Party. When the fuck would you possibly have class struggle in the Democratic Party? Okay? Class struggle occurs when you confront capital. That's when class struggle occurs. But it's also the case that you've got to have a position regarding politics that enables you to make sure that you will not be crushed by that very same government.
I understand this. I understand the concept of the inside game, outside game. I understand the importance of movement politics, leveraging the inside, electoral politics, so on, et cetera, so on and so forth. What I'm saying is that it's not as if we're dealing with a president who made any semblance of a belief that he was going to be progressive. He campaigned on saying, "I beat the socialists." He literally admitted.
Let me stop you right there, because again, we're not talking about what he said, but we're not talking about what he said. He said what he said.
Let's talk about what he's been.
No, we always talk about what he's been, and we always agree. Everybody here agrees that he hasn't been shit. He's been, like Harvey said, a neoliberal since he stepped in the door in 72? This man's been in politics longer than I've been on this earth, and I'm 43. I fart and pull a muscle. That's how old I am, and he's been in politics longer than that. What I'm saying is, the question I'm asking isn't about Joe Biden, the man. Let's not fuck interrogating the man, because I don't think Richard Nixon, the man, gives a fuck or did give a fuck about black people. He's literally on tape talking about the shoeless monkeys in Africa with Ronald Reagan in the 70s. So how does a left party start to work with labor in 2021? Because I feel we're pretty divorced from labor movements. That's just the way I feel. I could be wrong. But watching that shit in West Virginia should have gave people some hope, because it's foolish to think that every teacher in the state of West Virginia, and I have bad news for you guys if you haven't been to West Virginia in a while, I have. They're not all Democrats. They're not all liberal. You probably had a good amount of Trump voters in those striking teachers. Same can be said for Oklahoma. Definitely the same could be said for Los Angeles, one of the largest school districts in the fucking country. And of course, here in Oakland. So how do we work with these movements? To unionize Amazon is huge, because Amazon is the biggest employer in this country. It's huge. So how do we, if we are of the left, if we are supposed to be socialists, how do we work with these movements to get certain policies pushed? Because without a movement, ain't shit gonna move. So everything you say is right, Pascal. Everything you say is right without a movement.
Well, that's a different question. If we're talking about the need to develop, there's always a need to cultivate radical transformative movements, particularly those that are based on labor, racial justice, economic justice. There's no question about that. You're not going to get me to talk about, movements. There's no hope in having a movement. The question is do we have the material conditions and the cadre of individuals that we can depend on to collectively orchestrate strong, dedicated movements in what we call the left in the United States today. I think it's possible. I don't think it's impossible. But my position in terms of where my position was in terms of depending on the Joe Biden and this current administration as being the barometer of a progressive agenda, my faith is not remotely at all in the administration. Now, if you're saying that we need to focus on creating movements outside of electoral politics to pressure the current administration and to use leverage that we can, fine. Okay. I totally agree with you there. No question, no doubt. But my initial reticence was on the fact that I think that we were giving Biden a lot more credit than I think he personally deserves at this stage. I'd like to hear what the professor.
But before Harvey says, I do want to address and I'll shut up and I'll actually go off and do what I usually do on the production side. I do want to say one thing. Marcus from Left Flank Vets, we had a conversation once about AOC. I think it was on that Sunday show that we went for way too long. And when we always talk about, and Pascal and I do this more so off air, my big thing with worrying about the squad is I have a congressman here in Oakland. That's my congressman. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez helps out them people in Queens or doesn't help out them people in Queens. That's their problem. My problem is Barbara Lee. So when Marcus said, if you have a congressman that nobody isn't in the lexicon, there's like 400 of them motherfuckers. He goes, make that person famous. Because when they get faxes, when they're trending on Twitter, we're not talking about AOC, who lives their life on social media, or Ilhan Omar. These other Congress people that don't, because that dude worked in Congress for a congressperson that's not very popular. And when he said that, I was like, you're right. I can't worry about one person and what that one person does when I have a woman right here that don't get no heat. No heat. She's still getting props from saying no to the war in 2001 or whenever that was. No heat. Everybody's got congressmen in their districts. Put some heat on them if that's what you want to do. But worrying about 4 or 5 people out of 400, that doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, I'm
done. Professor Kaye, I would like to hear your thoughts.
I thought I was pretty clear. It strikes me that, look, I belong to a labor union. I have belonged to a labor union for a long time. I am a member of Democratic Socialists of America, but I've been far less active since the 90s than I was. My feeling is that it's not what the president does on his own. It's what he is made to do. And he's not going to be made to do anything if there isn't some kind of mass actions from below. And I mentioned before Black Lives Matter. I think that was an opportune moment. And I think that I know the idea and the movement in many ways continues, but it was a lost opportunity at that time to articulate a vision of a progressive social democratic struggle. And it didn't happen. And I can only hope something emerges in the near future. It's tough during a pandemic time to see people taken to the streets in any case in that fashion. But I do think, and I'm serious about it, that was a critical moment. And frankly, look, as long as the labor movement is weak, the left is going to be weak. There is no major progressive, radical, or social democratic possibilities until labor sees renewal. And that's my view of things. So in the meantime, we have to work with the diversity of movements. And look, if things get worse, we lose. I'll take reforms as much as I can. $15 a minute. Look, $15 an hour is ridiculous. It's much too low, but I'll take it. Okay, if we can get that. Expanding Medicare in some fashion to more people. I don't know why we're not pushing for Medicare for all kids for a start. I mean, I'll take those things right now, given the fact that we do not have the kind of organized labor movement that can make real change happened in this country. I mean, that's what it is.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think happens if, for example, we start to see evidence that Joe Biden turns towards austerity in his first term administration?
Well, the first thing that happens is 2022, the Republicans take power, and then we're back in an even deeper shit. Okay. As soon as that happens with austerity, then I think there probably ought to be a march on Washington. Hopefully by that time the pandemic will have been a little more contained than it has been these past 12 months now.
Let me ask you both this question. Do you think that people are a little too engaged online and not engaged enough with real movements to understand the importance of or to truly fear what an austerity presidency could look like post-pandemic? Because the only people that are really profiting in the pandemic, we have to be honest here, are like the tech sector, people that made out during the CARES Act.
Right.
But there was a documentary on a site called OnlyFans, which is somewhat of a sexually provocative site for the most part.
Somewhat of a sexually provocative. That's
well,
funny.
there's some people that have like bullshit talk shows on there. They're not.
Oh, they do. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a few guys.
I only know what I read in the New York Times, I guess.
Oh, it is definitely a lot of boobs. But anyway, it really blew up during the pandemic, and there's definitely some issues with it if you want to take like a socialist look at what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just taking advantage of people that don't have anything. And they're the only ones that are really coming up in this environment. And also we have to look at companies like Starbucks and McDonald's that are coming in and or Chipotle, sorry, that are buying all these businesses that lost out during the lockdown. So a lot of these donut shops and small mom and pop coffee shops are definitely getting bought up left and right. And Starbucks has literally said, I actually read Business Insider, they're very excited about this. Business Insider did a whole piece on it about them buying up little mom and pops all over the country. So,
really? Yeah. I had no idea. No, I'm somewhat out of it because the news is so utterly inadequate. I got to start reading the things you're reading.
I read Forbes. They're never gonna lie about that shit, right? But that's kind of so an austerity presidency. So we have a previous administration, right? Pascal and Professor Kaye.
Yeah, let me shift, okay, Jason. Let me shift the gears a bit because it's getting on in time, and I'm going to shift the gears and stay inside the theme you're on. Mm-hmm. So let's ask ourselves when really radical change occurred in this country. Okay, it occurred in the 1770s, it occurred in the 1860s, it occurred in the 1930s into the 1940s, and it occurred in the 1960s. Now, how did it happen? Well, it happened because the leaders at the time were primed in a fashion that at other times they might not have been, number one. Okay. And I'll even mention Washington, Lincoln, and FDR and LBJ. I'm not going to judge them individually. I don't give a shit. Okay. But the fact is that they were primed for revolution. They were primed to bring an end to slavery. They were primed for the empowerment of working people in the 30s. And Lyndon Johnson, yes, he was primed for the civil rights moment. You just have to look closely and you'll see that's the case. But it didn't happen because Washington, Lincoln, FDR, and LBJ became the leaders of the day. It happened because there were struggles from below. I mean, Americans shoved out British authority in 1774 and 1775. They didn't necessarily call for a revolution. They just thought they were going to defend themselves as British and that they had the rights of Britons. And then Washington ends up leading a Continental Army. And what do we find? The soldiers in that Continental Army read Common Sense of Thomas Paine in January 76. And Washington himself observes that this pamphlet calling for a revolution, not simply a colonial rebellion, that his men are changing their minds. It's from the bottom up that the idea of independence and the making of a democratic republic emerges. And that pushes the likes of Washington and the other elite founders into the revolutionary moment. Take Abraham Lincoln. He hated slavery. He was primed to bring it to an end. Okay. But what enables him to do it? Two things. Not the Civil War is the context, but two things. Number one, as the war takes place and the Union Army is moving in from the West and to some extent in various places from the North into the South, slaves en masse begin to move to the Union lines and demand to be taken in as workers and possibly enlisted in the army. And this enables Lincoln himself to see the possibilities to now issue an Emancipation Proclamation. But what then also enables him to do that is that white Northern soldiers who are farmers and laborers and artisans, as they go into the South, they confront head on the horrors of slavery and are impressed by these slaves who are, in essence, rebelling by leaving. Lincoln is empowered now to sign that Emancipation Proclamation. It isn't Lincoln the emancipator, though. That's the school book story. It's the fact that you had a leader who was primed, and you had Americans who rose up or were organized in a fashion to make a president take action. FDR was a progressive from the beginning. Okay, and most historians fail to consider the degree to which he had already been governor of New York and was already primed to do many of the things he would pursue as president. But when he does so, he's literally empowered by the organizing of workers. Now, labor unions were weak at the outset of the 30s, really weak, but Americans were mobilizing. And when FDR came into office, the National Industrial Recovery Act included the empowerment of workers to organize unions, and workers in the millions began in the course of the 30s to organize. And it didn't mean by organizing they won. It meant that they were organized to pursue the class struggle against their bosses, and also to enable FDR to enact later, to sign into law, he didn't enact, Congress enacts, to sign into law the National Labor Relations Act. And these were like Magna Cartas for organized labor. And we know the story of the 60s and the civil rights struggles, but we sometimes fail to consider that the lobbying that took place in Congress by the AFL-CIO, which had its own story of racism in some of the sectors, especially the trade sector. Nevertheless, they lobbied. African Americans and their white allies in the South marched and took beatings, and the changes began. Now, the counter-revolution, as Pascal would call it, that took place in the 70s, we've seen it for 45 years, 50 years if you like, but I've been saying 45, that when after workers' rights, that stripped workers' rights in many places. My own state of Wisconsin, which was the first state to enact the right for public employees to organize and bargain collectively, in 2010, financed by the Koch brothers, Scott Walker, and the Republicans won, and we lost our collective bargaining rights. They stripped them from us and later turned us into a right to work state. So yeah, the reaction occurs over the course of these 45 years. And labor has gone from being, once upon a time in the mid-50s, 1 of every 3 workers was in a union, down to, at best, 1 in 10, depending on the sector of labor you're talking about. So you want to see the kind of changes? Well, Biden is better than Trump, but Biden isn't Bernie Sanders. No, Biden isn't Franklin Roosevelt. But what we definitely need to do is we can't just talk about it. You've got to create unions. You've got to organize, and you've got to demand in the workplace, in the political arena, you've got to demand that the promise of America of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness be articulated in a 21st century way. That's the story. And when Americans start doing that, then I don't even care if it's called socialism or social democracy or FDR liberalism. There are too many people suffering right now. Too many people have lost their rights that our grandfathers had, and they would be ashamed of us for allowing these rights to have been taken from us.
So what you're saying is that we need a movement of massive consciousness and social awakening to transform and fight against the status quo in this country, or else we're going to be faced. The option is there is no other option.
Yeah,
Much.
I mean,
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much it.
But I guess that's my fear. My fear is that it's the awakening part, right? There's been this war against unions for 45, 50 years. That's a long time to be anti-labor.
Oh, here's a practical question. How do we? And I agree with you. By the way, you're not going to get me to disagree with that. I agree with that basic strategy. How do we make that a reality when we have the whole right, pretty much the Republican Party, the right flank of capital in America, immersed in a political movement that is beyond reactionary, absolute fantasy? We're talking about QAnon level, this total absolute. I mean, the Republican Party has been a reactionary party probably, for a long time, from the rise of Goldwater.
Yeah,
but they, at one point they at least seemed reasonable. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think they truly became reactionary. They truly became reactionary. I mean, things happen over time. So Goldwater winning the nomination in 1960. Goldwater was a reactionary. I mean, he opposed civil rights. He opposed labor unions. I mean, he opposed the whole gamut of progressive endeavors. So what happens? He wins the nomination in 64. The Republican Party is now a party of the new right. However, they briefly lost control of the party. Nixon was not of the new right. He was a reactionary in many ways, but he was a Cold War type reactionary. Ronald Reagan represents the reemergence of that Goldwater politics.
Mm-hmm.
He had a smile on his face, Reagan. Okay, he even found his way to working with Tip O'Neill and the Democrats. But the 1980s, which celebrated, what was it? The yuppies and the lifestyles of the rich and famous. I mean, the entire media went all out in creating a Reaganite America. And what did the Democrats do? Nothing. And by the way, the reason I get such a kick out of the fact that people thought I was defending the Democrats is they obviously haven't read anything I've written, anything I've said. Okay, give me a fucking break. Okay, but what I am saying is that if you think a movement unto itself is what brings about change, you're living in a fantasy world.
Mm-hmm. I like to welcome. I know Harvey it's late, and I'm keeping him up longer than he wants to be. There's so much fire right now. There's so much fire right now. We can't. Pascal, I don't know if you're
not keeping me up. It's only the fact that this is the second or third show I've done today, so my voice is a little.
And everybody kind of asks you like a lot of the same shit. So Marcus from the Left Flank Vets is here. Pascal, can you see Marcus?
I see
Marcus. Where's Marcus from? Can I ask?
I'm a mutt. My parents are Jamaican. They came over here in late 70s. My dad joined the Army for citizenship, so I was born in Fort Hood. Hopefully no longer called that much longer.
I think it still is Fort Hood.
It still is. Yeah.
Was Hood a Confederate general or something?
He was. And actually defector from the North as well. He abandoned his unit and all of his men to go to the South to fight for slavery. But yeah, so I was born in Texas, mostly lived in Columbus, Ohio, but my family did live a little bit in Puerto Rico, but I call Ohio home. I mean, I got one of these. So,
where do you live now?
I'm in Maine now.
Oh, wow. That's a difference.
Yeah, he's in punk.
Yeah. But I was in the Marine Corps too, and I think I saw about 17 different countries while I was in the Marine Corps, and I've been all over. So yeah, I'm kind of a mutt.
We're all mutts, by the way.
So Marcus, we were talking electoral politics and left movements. That's kind of your thing, right?
That I feel like that's my niche, is trying to be I think I fit in more on the electoral politics side, obviously, just from my former job. Being a staffer within the House, and and I see a lot of like I guess where like Pascal and Harvey are on like on the same side, going in the same direction, but there is like kind of, I feel like they need more of a shotgun blast. You need more of a fire hose to widespread, you know. But like honestly too, it's like I think
I'll take the fire hose over the shotgun.
yeah. Sorry. I start talking to the military, then I just go into violence. I'm sorry, I apologize. Let's just do fire hose. Let's not use weapons. So like a widespread of action, of dedication, and at the end of the day too, at least what I talk about when people engaging with electoral politics, these are things that does not take a lot of time. It does not take much time to engage with your elected officials, just for them to know what you want them to do on a particular issue or every issue. But with that, it also takes, what are you doing in a community? Do you even know your neighbor's name and any troubles and tribulations that they might be going to? But also to the next level of the local organizations. Are you a part of any of the alphabets, right? And like, I don't want to get too into like, oh, hey, well, this headquarters is bad, or this one local group in Spokane, you need to be doing it all. Mm-hmm. And not in the sense that you need to be a mastery of it all, but let's say you are, if you work too much, got it. But that's the thing too, is like, I think, hey, it needs to be a full-time thing of getting towards the left.
The question I wanted to bring though is that what does it mean for us on the left when the energy of rebellion is with the right now, problematically? What does that mean for us, for those of us who have traditionally been with the forces challenging the status quo? Now, we can question whether or not these formations on the right are really challenging the status quo, or is this kind of like an emergence of a kind of just a fascist tendency? That's a conversation we can have. But what is concerning to me is that the energy of challenging the normative functioning of the status quo seems to be coming with the reactionaries, while I see the left and liberals kind of in this kind of befuddling, almost kind of like circle jerk.
I kind of have a question to respond to your question. Because I wonder if what we see now on the left is it the building towards a more substantive, I guess, movement? Because there is a growing in left media, there is a growing in left organizing, and that's what was happening with the right when you've got things like the Federalist Society or Tea Party or any of those things. So do you think that maybe we're just lagging behind and we don't have the money that the right gets for a lot of those aspects? And that is a big issue as well. We don't have the money that a lot of the right media gets. So that's why it's interesting. Like, I was talking to Gerald Horne a while back, and part of the conversation he talked about Reverend Wright got a bunch of money, and BLM had got not BLM, but some of the girls in BLM. I don't know if BLM exactly got money. I forget who actually got the money. And one thing he brought up was how hard it is to raise money when you're organizing these kinds of foundations. He's like, that's really fucking hard. And he wasn't saying take the bag, but he's saying you'd be surprised who takes the bag. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was kind of an interesting point, because we don't really talk about that stuff with organizing. Like, this shit isn't free. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's I mean, Harvey, you're OG right now. Harvey, you're the OG in the room. Like, you've been part of these movements from back in the day when you had a full afro.
That's good. That's good.
But like, what now and then? Do you think the internet helps? Do you
I mean, all I know is I've seen for 45 years defeat upon defeat with punctuations of victory. And look, that book that you held up before, Take Hold of Our History, I laid out the agenda, and it strikes me that if we don't figure out how to coalesce into a broad popular front kind of setup, that we aren't going anywhere. Okay, they'll take us out. They'll take each movement on, take what they want of it, and trash it. Okay, so the whole idea that there's look, back in the 30s, they came together, the left. This included fighting liberals, socialists, communists, radicals into a united front. But the capacity of that united front was predicated on the fact that they had a president who was ready to act in the fashion that they wanted to go. Now, that's where I started with Biden. I didn't say that I thought Biden was going to do it. What I was saying was that is the situation we face. We have a weak left and we have an inadequate president. So the trick is, well, where do we begin? Well, we can't change the president overnight. We're stuck with him. Okay, and we're stuck with the Congress we have. But this Congress is better than any Congress I have seen in years. And Pascal, correct me. You can't name a Congress that had socialists like this in the course of the last 40 years. You can't do it. So laugh all you want about the squad. You can laugh about Bernie. The fact is, that's exactly what we got. And to imagine a socialist is the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, I mean, it's phenomenal. Okay. And it is a pivotal spot. But the better question is, what do we do? What do we do? Okay. Well, before I mentioned all those percolations of movements, right? I mentioned all of them, but did they ever coalesce? Was there any kind of coalescence? Was there any kind of solidarity? You know, Biden talks about unity unity. That he must have been high that day. Okay. But solidarity, it should not be out of the question. Young people are so far ahead of this older generation that I'm a part of. I mean, my generation is just literally, once upon a time-ish, right? And if we don't see greater degrees of solidarity, and also, I mean, we're talking socialists here. If socialists think they're any better than simple progressives, we're in trouble. It's not going to work. The fact is that progressives want certain kinds of things that we are more committed to. That doesn't mean we can't figure out a way to work, to push. And I'm not talking about liberals in the sort of non-fighting variety. I'm talking about there are a lot of great leftists who would not use the term socialism. That doesn't make them aliens to us. And if it does, then we ain't going to win anything. Forget it.
Yeah, we're talking about the various.
Well, frankly, I'll be honest. Look, I'm going to be honest with you, Jason. Marxism, Leninism went out decades ago. Okay, Marx speaks to us. I'm sorry, my association will not be with Stalinists and Leninists.
Yeah, I hear you. I
agree with that. Yeah. I feel like that's what's dangerous is like you.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. It's that I just all I do know is you asked before about are people online too much, right? But Marcus made a really important point. There is, or maybe you said it, I thought it was Marcus, this growing sort of left media. I've been saying this for at least a year now, okay? And I think we took a beating with the loss of Michael because I think he inspired a lot of the left media. But the fact is that we've got this left media around the country that to some extent, yeah, maybe, they come and go podcasts. It's tough to sustain them. But it is the case that you've got young people who are listening to these things. I mean, my own students who were generally progressive, I had no idea the degree to which they were tuned into all of this until I said this. Pascal, you may have heard me say this when Adolf and I were talking. I walked into class one day and one of my students said, "Wow, you're cooler than we thought, man. You're on Michael Brooks' show, right?" And I thought, wow, I didn't know that was the measure of my leftism, but there you go. So you've got vast numbers of young people. The trick is not to be cynical with these young folks. They're out ready to do things, and they've got to figure out ways of being organized and moving ahead. They've got to be encouraged to, if they're in a workplace with a union, you join the union. If they're a workplace where there's talk of a union, get active. Contact the appropriate union to help you with an organizer. You want to organize around environmental justice, you do it, and then make sure that you don't become a one-issue person. Do your best to bring them together. I think you were implying that, right, Marcus?
Yeah, and actually, this is something, and like you make a big point, because without Michael Brooks, I wouldn't have been sitting here. You know, Michael Brooks and a few other like the new online left media was like what I was watching in my barracks room, you know, after my second deployment, because I couldn't square what I was doing with like what I thought should be going on. And yeah, who knows where I would have been if I wasn't able to find people to explain it to me. And yeah, and that's part of the reason why we started, you know, Left Flank Vets, was to talk about from a leftist veteran perspective, to make sure that we're fighting narratives of like hyper patriotism and nationalism and all those things. But really, yeah, at the end of the day, you know, making sure we're giving a space for more leftists to join, right? Making sure that veterans understand, hey, you don't have to think this way. Right. There are other, you know, there are others out there.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day,
oh,
I was just saying, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Everything, yeah, like each issue none of it exists on its own. It's a constellation. You know, whatever your focus is, that just happens to be the sun, but it's a star amongst stars. And understanding and having greater understanding of how things are connected, and also, yeah, a greater understanding of how you can engage in different things at different levels, right? Or even if it's just paying dues, it's all helpful.
Now, Jason's heard me. Jason knows where I go with this, which I haven't done tonight. But that is the trick in all this, is not to find great works of Marxism or anything else. The idea is to lay hold of the American radical story. Okay, because we've got to not only educate ourselves, we've got to make sure that we speak in a language that others will understand. The likes of, you know, of the rhetoric of Thomas Paine, the rhetoric of Frederick Douglass, the rhetoric of Eugene Debs. These folks spoke American, okay? And they spoke a radical language that resonated among their fellow workers and their fellow citizens to be, or their fellow citizens. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we have to be speaking. Look, forget who wrote the documents even, okay? The fact is that the United States was founded in a promise that was unfulfilled, okay? A promise that was literally denied. But it is the case that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness speaks to the 21st century. That is a social democratic, if not democratic socialist promise. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't get any more radical than that. By the way, that's not a political and economic program, but that's a language around which you can build a serious left politics. And I'm serious about that. I have no reservations in saying it.
So are you saying that you think that the left is too obsessed with European ideology and thought instead of practical?
No, I'm not saying that. No, I think that there are currents on the left, I think, that are. Okay. Look, Michael and I used to talk, and I used to say to him, you know, I was trying to figure out why'd you want me on the Michael Brooks show? Because if you look at on the Sundays, they used to issue, what are we reading? They still do. What are we reading? And what are they reading? They're reading Marxist texts. And I thought, well, why do they want me on? By the way, most people won't know, my first major work all had to do with British Marxism. and it'll be out again next year with Zero Books. And I was close to, I mean, I was a Marxist, and I still would, my thought remains deeply influenced by it. But somewhere along the line, I realized if you're going to make a difference in America, you've got an American radical tradition that was deeply influenced by foreign currents and domestic currents, okay? And that, seriously speaking, if we fail to speak American, if we fail to appreciate, look, who do you think is the foremost radical thinker of modern era? Who said we have it in our power to begin the world over again? Who said that? It wasn't a Marxist. It was Thomas Paine in 1776.
Common sense.
Okay. Who said, listen to this, who said economic laws are not given by nature, they're made by humans? Franklin Roosevelt.
Well, let me ask you this, Harvey. Professor K, my dog. Is it harder to imagine, and we were watching this documentary series by a British documentarian named Adam Curtis, and it's kind of about these revolutionaries, Mao's wife.
By the way, everyone should read the Communist Manifesto. Let me be clear.
It's a quick read. That's one of the ones where it's like, hey, it's a quick one.
You can get it on Blinkist, and it's like 10 minutes if you just want to like read the high points read to you. But in the era of the individual, and a lot of these greater movements that we saw, Mao's revolution in China, but basically any revolution, you have the civil rights movement. You have to give something up for yourself to be part of a greater movement. And is that kind of something that we're missing in this day and age of the individual?
Well, okay, you know, when you ask that, on another moment I might have said yes, but I'm not going to right now.
I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking.
Look, this is the 10th anniversary of the Wisconsin Rising, back in 2011. So when Scott Walker and the Republicans stripped public employees of our collective bargaining rights, I assume you all remember. If you don't, maybe I'll help you remember. We occupied the state capitol. By the way, we didn't smash anything. We probably cleaned it up as opposed to dirtied it up. But 100,000 Wisconsinites occupied the Capitol Square, and we occupied, I didn't sleep over, but there were thousands who literally physically occupied the state Capitol building. And I can tell you that when my wife and I went down and joined the gathering, and we went into the Capitol building and spent the evening, it was a celebration of the power of the people. And the song that was played, and I don't know where it began before that, because Wisconsin Rising antedated Occupy, by the way, was "This is what democracy looks like." And I didn't feel like I was giving anything up. I felt like I was gaining incredible strength. Okay. And it brought me to tears. I was overwhelmed by the experience, actually. And it just strikes me that you can't always occupy a Capitol building, but it is the case that you can definitely join with others and have your voices sing, chant, and shout, and be heard. And, you know, just lock your arms, learn how to sing together.
Maybe that's one of the issues if cats aren't singing together.
You know, I've wondered about that. I have to tell you, this is related. So I have a really good friend over in England. I lived in England for a while, and he grew up in a working class neighborhood and became a PhD. And he came. I had him come over to visit me and to talk to my students. And we went out on the Friday afternoon that he was here with my students to a bar, a tavern, a pub. It was a bar. And he said, "Are we going to sing?" He actually said, "Are we going to sing? You know, are we going to sing?" And he got the students into singing. And I thought, wow, do Americans feel comfortable singing together if they're not in a church or a synagogue or someplace like that?
I mean, there's a few songs Da, da, da. What's that? That's that one.
Da-na-na-na-na. Hey, that
No,
one?
no.
Don't sing that one.
Sweet Caroline. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Sweet Care.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, and I and actually, there's when you were talking about like even like speaking, speaking to the audience, speaking to Americans on the left, or Americans in general, to pull them on the left. No, I mean it's like a very simple thing in regards to just communication, right?
Yeah.
Know your audience. That I think some of the most passionate, people about Marxist ideas or socialism, communism, some of the most passionate people don't know how to translate that, into just frankly normal talk, right? Our normal fucking lexicon. Like there's no transition. And it's actually something that we tried to even just talk about. I think it was last Sunday on my channel, was like just looking at, the 10-point plan within the Communist Manifesto, the 10-point program with the Black Panthers, the 8 to abolition, and like, because there needs to be something easy. There needs to be some type of umbrella where people can organize under outside of the Democratic Party, And is there an easy list, or is there an easy way to kind of like spread that word, galvanize in similar ways that have done before? And songs, like you were kind of mentioning, was a huge way, especially, when you talk about the American labor movement, and we talk about Debs all the time, because like Debs is like the socialist version of Keep It Simple, Stupid.
Yeah.
And he's just a great person to talk.
Debs had 3 heroes. His 3 heroes, Debs. One was Jesus Christ. Another was Patrick Henry. But the one he really, 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 really seemed to have embraced was my man, Thomas Paine. Okay.
Have you read
By the
Common
way-
Sense, Pascal?
Probably not since college.
Sometimes.
Okay, Jason, I just got to tell you that I got to get up early tomorrow and drive to St. Louis.
Oh shit. Okay.
Okay. My grandson's 6th birthday is on Monday. I've had the 2 vaccinations, and my wife and I don't want to miss this opportunity to get out of the house and drive to St. Louis.
Well,
So I actually do need to cut myself off from the
You've
conversation.
been on for a long. You gave us a lot of your time. We appreciate it.
No, I seriously, I'd stay on a lot longer, but I gotta, if I'm revved up, and I'll probably need an hour before I can even go to bed.
Professor
You know how to
J
reach me,
Kaye,
Jason. We can do this again soon if you want. Okay.
Hey, thank you. Have fun with the grandson. Have fun
Thank you,
being a grandpa.
Pascal. Nice to meet you, Marcus. Similarly. Okay.
Nice to meet you, sir.
And the people in the chat, didn't mean to yell at you, but
That's right. If they're from my chat, yell at them all you want. I'll yell at them later.
okay.
Peace, Harvey. Thank you.
Bet. It was a.
Oh shit.
Now, how do I leave?
Just close it. Just close it.
Let's close it. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Peace. That was fun, man. I think conversations like that have to be had, because at some point people have to see that you can butt heads a little bit, but still be part of the same movement.
Can I say that when I was just listening,
Mhm.
I don't think that Pascal and Harvey were saying that many, like saying really 2 different things.
I agree.
Pascal, you're just telling you're just giving reality. It's not necessarily like you're saying don't try and do anything. Excuse me. But just given the facts of this is what the Biden administration is, this is what he's done in his past, this is what they're likely to do in the future. That's just reality. And the same way too, Harvey saying, hey, in some ways, Biden is malleable. That's true.
I mean, my whole position is my reaction to his statement about I'm looking forward to Biden saying, go join the union, all of that stuff, was that Harvey J Kaye spent the first 20 minutes of this show talking about how the Democrats started neoliberalism and Joe Biden was an integral part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole preface of his initial discussion was laying the political economy that has been grounding Americans to dust for 40 years at the feet of the Democratic Party. I didn't make that up. You guys listened to it itself.
Yeah.
And then after saying Trump was the worst, Trump's got to go, pivoting on to be like, I'm looking forward to Biden. I was like, whoa, what?
Do you think? Well, I don't think that both necessarily can exist at the same time. And like maybe just being excited for anything for Biden is like even just an overstatement. You know,
he made some factually correct, true statements. You know, we have socialists in Congress, AOC, well, and maybe a couple of others. We have Bernie Sanders, who's head of the Finance Budget Committee, which a socialist. First of all, you know, there are people on the left who will debate whether or not those people are even socialists. I didn't even go there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. I would also agree, right, that the introduction of democratic socialism into the political discourse from Occupy to the rise of Sanders is something that is definitely a political bright spot in the 50-year counter-revolution. It technically shouldn't have happened if you really see the political trajectory this country has been on.
Yeah, Cori Bush. Me and you were talking about Cori Bush. It was me and you or me and Marcus. I forget because sometimes they all look alike. But
oh damn!
I agree. Factually, the professor is correct that these are unprecedented. But my position is that the current administration has stated that its function is not to combine forces with those progressive powers or socialist powers, but to neutralize them. In other words, I don't see the Democratic Party as being a party that's trying to embrace the Sanders faction.
Hell no.
No,
of course not.
That's
the point.
Yeah, this is what it's like.
The point is not their embracing of anything. Cori Bush to me shows that, like, look, I'm putting my big black ass up in this shit, and I'm finna mix it up. I may not agree with everything she does and says, but I love the fact that she's in it. Literally,
my position is this, and you can call me cynical, I don't care. By the nature of the institutional mechanisms of elected officialdom in the two-party bourgeois system that we have in the United States, the nature of the job requires you to coalesce with the center as opposed to moving to the left. And the only way you're going to change that fulcrum of pulling you to the center is to have a massively strong movement on the left that is forcing the political establishment to make concessions. And as much as I agree with the professor that we're going to need that, we don't have that. The energy of rebellion in America right now is not with the left. It is with the right. I appreciate the professor being filled with, glee at what he saw with Black Lives Matter on that, but all of those movements were fully subsidized by the liberal left flank of capital.
Now,
what does that mean if you're still doing good shit at the end of the day?
What does that mean is that the terms of the good shit you're going to do are still going to be within the prerogatives of the people who are writing you checks.
So do you think Reverend Barber's full of shit? Because he got a whole bunch of money.
No comment. I think that Reverend Barber is working within a certain paradigm that is within. What'd you say?
Has his rhetoric changed?
Listen, I think. Listen, I'm not going to speak ill of the Reverend Barber. I think he's working within the nonprofit industrial complex.
But that's my question. Like, if the rhetoric is changing, That was kind of Gerald Horton's whole point. You can take the bag, but if the bag makes your rhetoric change, well, then you are the sellout that we call you the sellout, right? If your rhetoric,
I'm not trying to reduce this to being about a politics of sellout.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that, there's a reason why when you're seeing TV commercials on Amazon.com talking about, BLM and all that stuff, that doesn't bode to me as a good sign that this is going to be changing the status quo.
I mean,
My largest point is this. Whether we agree with it or not, and obviously we don't agree with it because it's not good. For some strange and sad reason, the energy of rebellion is with the reactionary right now. That's a problem. Everyone wants to just kind of listen, Trump got 74 million votes. He's got people out here who will believe we have the same way that the professor's thrilled that we have socialists that are in Congress. We have QAnon supporters in Congress. We have right-wing insurrectionists in Congress.
That's where I gotta wonder though. So from last Congress to this one, the left within Congress grew.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I say democratic socialists, not full socialists, or even they're just progressives, right? But that grew. That cohort grew. The center cohort shrank, and the far right reactionary cohort grew.
Well, can I ask you guys this question? Are we seeing more of a far right cohort, or are we seeing Republicans take a note from Bernie Sanders and the left flank of the Democratic Party when it comes to small money donations? And now, instead of just getting all of your money from Raytheon, you can milk your base of reactionaries by preaching to a crowd. I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
No, I think. I mean, obviously, yeah. So,
I think that the terms upon which the right wing organizes itself are distinct and different from the phenomenon we have on the left. I think that they are more ideological, while on the right is more ideological. When on the left, it was more policy that was driving the movement than ideology. I think that we have a phenomenon in America on the right that is something that we haven't seen before. That is a type of reactionary right wing that is not rational, that is not traditional in anything we've seen. I'm not calling it fascist. I don't want to get into that debate. But what I'm saying is that we have a left that is depending on a bunch of, internet chatter that is based on a kind of discourse that I don't think is putting pressure on the we are reacting to what the current administration is doing. We're not putting pressure on the current administration.
Oh, I agree. I agree. It's because I want to read what Francis said, and then I want to respond to that. Pascal, people are locking down on pipelines. Steve Martinez is refusing to cooperate with the federal grand jury in North Dakota. Hunger strikers right now in Angola. Rebellion is not owned by the right. I do have to. There's a movement globally that I think gets a little squashed because, first of all, we don't like Hong Kong is a complex situation, so you can't look at that as a global leftist movement, right? Because it's just a complex.
I'm not talking.
But even if you even want to talk like just locally, in my city of Oakland, people got together to literally defund the police and get the police to agree to that defunding. Even though I have my issues with the hotels for the homeless from a procedural level, that gets done because of people pushing for it to happen. Moms for Housing puts it in the spotlight in a national news story for the fact that corporations own hundreds of thousands of vacant homes and leave them vacant on purpose. And we're looking at housing as a human right, as actually a political platform that people have to address. Medicare for all, whether we agree with the wording or not, is now a political platform that people have to address. And let's just take the Wayback Machine to 2012. That was not spoken about during the second Obama election.
I definitely agree with you that the political Overton window has been expanded since 2016 and 2020. I don't deny that at all. I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying that it's not a good thing that we have this kind of quote progressive politics. I'm just saying that I am not one who is encouraged by depending on the Democratic Party as the harbinger of good things to come based on its 45-year history in this country. What I'm saying is that it's going to depend on movements, organized, powerful movements, and that this country is a reactionary country. It's been a reactionary country for a while. And it's going to have to be something that is going to be very, very, very powerful. And all I'm saying is that it's not here yet.
Look, I don't know what you're talking about. I saw 5 commercials, light-skinned people in all of them.
There was three out of 6 commercials.
3 out of 6 commercials.
Biracial couples.
I saw biracial couples.
Got it. No, and well, I guess I get a question for you, Pascal. Is Harvey had mentioned how we talk and how we discuss things, might have effect on other people's actions, right? And so, like, he mentioned like young people and making sure that they're inspired and all this, that, and whatever. Is there anything that you see that is positive, in the here and the now, or is there just things that we need to get done?
I think it is positive that we have. Listen, I'm old enough to remember where you wouldn't even have young people talking about they want to be socialists. It wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
It was non-existent. I mean, I think it's positive that the American ruling class is terrified that we have a segment of American youth who are coalescing around the left. I think the fact that Trump in 2020 literally was calling Joe Biden a Marxist-Leninist socialist, as comical as that was, illustrates how much they are scared.
Yeah. Yep.
I just wish that we had a left that had the capacity to benefit from that energy to make them justified in feeling threatened.
Well, that's kind of what that documentary was about. I finally saw the last episode, and where I definitely have a lot of issues with it. It definitely asked that question: in an age of the individual, what is a revolutionary?
Jason, I gotta ask, man, how much did Adam and Curtis pay you? Man, you drop the documentary a lot,
because it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question to ask. Like you two. I keep forgetting that we're on air right now. That's why I keep the chat up here like this so I can remember I'm on air. I almost slipped up. Talking to you two, because I think we all are revolutionary in some aspect, right? With the way we think. In the age of the individual, it's easy to get caught up in individualism, and Pascal and Torre and Cedric say this shit to me all the time. If you think your biggest contribution to the leftist movement was motherfucking hip hop, then maybe you really ain't done shit. And to think about listening to Tupac talk in some of those interviews on that documentary, because he had 2 really good Tupac interviews. The one when he was in high school in Marin City, and the one when he was in prison. Those are really good interviews from a Tupac that's reconnecting with his Black Panther upbringing. And I think that young man could have really done something, but then I ask myself, well, what really could he have done in this era? Like right now, what is a left movement going to be if not co-opted?
No, and I think, I mean,
okay. You guys ever seen Black Mirror? Right, that episode of Black Mirror where the dude has the speech and he gets so fired up, and then at the end of the day, what happens? Here's your ticket to fame and fortune. Now you're just going to repeat this rhetoric and not really be about anything, which to me is what Judas and the Black Messiah ultimately is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think of things. I I think that there's a lot of different situations that could play into it, you know, and like there could have been a million of things that could have happened with Tupac that could have, you know, like the butterfly effect type shit. At the end of the day, I mean, I like looking back to figure out what we got to do right next time. And so that's where, yeah, I mean, that's where I constantly trying to just like look forward, you know, Afro samurai type of shit, always forward. You know, so that's to say, it was like, so like, how do we use Tupac to make sure we don't end up like Pac?
I don't know. Somebody asked in the chat, do you think Tupac would have ended up like Ice Cube? I think Ice Cube was always Ice Cube because he had an affiliation with the Nation of Islam from early on. And we've talked at length about the Nation of Islam, Pascal, and their right-wing black capitalist politics. So I think Ice Cube has always been a black capitalist, whereas Tupac definitely was just raised in a different household. I forget who his father was, but his stepfather was like an early black doctor in the hood kind of clinic guy. And I forget what city he was living in at the time. Maybe it was New York. Maybe Pascal, maybe you know who the dude is. I can't remember the dude's name.
I just want to know why we're confusing realism for cynicism.
I don't know. That's how. I feel like people want to just hear you say something happy, Pascal. If they just want to see you say something fucking like positive and nice and like, man, do I got to go to bed like this? Do I got to go to bed feeling like this?
Why y'all make it seem like I'm always the glum one in the room?
Motherfucker, because you the glum one. You know you is. Grimacy ass motherfucker. You know you came in here stealing everybody's sunshine.
No, that's the thing is like, you're right, though. You're right. And that's the thing is like, if you're telling reality and reality sucks, you know, you just said something that sucks. That's kind of where we're at. It's like you're giving it all, like you're not wrong, you know. And like that's one thing that I wanted to make sure, like I recognize, hey, you're talking about what's fucking real.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like, yeah, like I'm always just like, okay, like, yeah, like, all right. So, and like, that's like, where do we go from here? And also too, is like, I think what Harvey is trying to do is recognize small victories so that we can build momentum, because any movement, you know, no matter how big it's going to get, it's going to start on a small win. It's going to start on the small win of getting 3 people to a meeting and one of them's 15 minutes late.
You know what? And to that point, this show for me is as close as I'm going to get to performing again. And I've been talking with people about music, and one of my bandmates has been mixing a project that I recorded when the pandemic first started. And especially the last tour I was on, it's easy to be doom and gloom, real, whatever you want to call it. But when you actually have a room full of people that you have the ability now to unify, then you really start.
You got to find that energy. You got to find, when you're leading a cadre of individuals, you got to find that energy to find positive. You can't start a movement on doom and gloom. You got to have hope. You can't start an endeavor saying this can never work. This won't happen. I get that. I understand that. But what I'm saying is that we're not right now. We're having a conversation about the reality of what politics is on the ground. That doesn't require us to be like, oh, I'm hopeful, and just tell the truth, man.
Yeah.
People can smell when you're bullshitting them.
Oh, for sure.
You know
this. I'm and keep in mind, I wasn't a kumbaya ass musician. You saw me. I sent you the video of me live, so it's not, shiny happy music that I do. But at some point, I have to leave the crowd understanding that we're kind of all in the fight together. And living amongst homeless people truly reminded me that we're all in a certain fight together when they're really your neighbors. You know what I'm saying? It really changed my perspective on a lot of shit, because I'm seeing people get up in the morning and go to work. I'm seeing motherfuckers sweep in front of their tent. It really changes your perspective on movements and revolution and what the fuck is important and what we need to do. And that's why I think we all collectively, the three of us, get mad at the bullshit, the silly shit on the internet. You ain't a real leftist because you said yada yada, and you ain't a real Marxist because you ain't read blah blah blah. Bitch, please miss me with that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shit is a lot. I think a lot of that shit is garbage. A lot of it is garbage. I'm not to the point of the professor where he was like, talk to them in American. I'm like, we can learn from a lot of different stuff as well. I mean,
yeah, that's why I say know your audience.
You have to know your audience, though.
It's
you
different than,
I mean, this, he made a lot of, like, smacking a guy who's a 60-hour-a-week blue-collar working guy with Marx's 18th Brumiere is not organizing. That's some bullshit.
Yep.
I want to say this right now. I'm not really going to talk about our political differences and the political differences of Jared Ball. I don't really know if we have too many differences. I've watched the show. I enjoy a lot of the work that he does, and I don't have anything bad to say about Jared Ball.
No, there's something that, like, and I don't think. Well, actually, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but no, there's like I was saying earlier, it's like there's a little bit you can do, right? But if you're actually able to get into, like, and not necessarily like reading all fucking iterations of Das Kapital and going into like all these classes and stuff like that, right? That does take us some amount of, like, education, thought to kind of understand the theories. But at the end of the day, the local organizing is what's going to make the difference. Whether you're organizing tenants union, whether you're just organizing a fucking neighborhood potluck to make sure someone that had just lost a family member has some food to eat. Like all of those things that it kind of goes into it. And that's what's necessary. I think that's where, like, Pascal, you're asking, like, what is going to actually make the left, and like all it is just people literally going out and then building those structures to where you say, hey, we gotta.
Listen, I take the professor's point in terms of the left being stuck in this kind of, like, intellectual circle jerk around European philosophers and thinkers, and in terms of lack of practical utility in organizing working class people. I get that. I don't think that's an unfair criticism. However, I don't think that you should begrudge people who want to take a deep dive intellectually into theory and thought. But I think that tendency that we have on the left is a consequence of the class makeup of the left. Mm-hmm. We have a left that is made up of a bunch of university, petit bourgeois, professional managerial class adjacent type people, quite frankly, who are having sophisticated conversations about XYZ, so on and so forth. A lot of people are more interested in, like, yo, listen, how are we going to get healthcare? More basic, simple, tangible questions. And I think part of the problem why the reason why the left is not that strong is, frankly, because of that class tendency and because of that posture that we particularly have. And that when we say we want to be a movement of the working class, come on, man. Do y'all watch some of the discourse we have on YouTube? What working class about that?
Yeah. No,
we wonder why the reactionary right is more appealing to working class people.
Well, you know what?
And expanding and becoming a multiracial coalition as well.
I'll say this. I had a dude, he's not a socialist. Justin Hunt.
No,
Justin Hunt. It was probably about your age, Marcus. Younger guy. He has a very popular hip hop show. And we were talking about the Democratic convention and the Republican convention. This was last year. And he goes, if the Democrats would have handled their convention like the Republicans, then everybody would have voted for Democrats. He goes, the Republicans brought in real people. Even though you may think they're despicable people, those are real fucking people. And there's something to be said about your point, Pascal, about the Republican Party. Even though I think they're a bit reactionary, they're reactionary and it's silly and they really don't have a true ideology other than just fuck shit up. But of all the people the Democrats could have brought on the stage in that convention, and they wanted to bring out these fucking old school hawks, they could have brought out Chris Smalls, right? But there's a lot of people on the left as well that don't really like Chris because he doesn't fit into your paradigm of what you think a leftist should be. He's got gold fronts. He look every time I see a picture of him. I told him the other day, I said, it looked like you about to drop a fire mixtape every time I see you finna be speaking somewhere. And I think there's people that just don't like that. But he's part of a real working class movement.
Yeah, no, that's something where like we can that's like what we can fix, I think. With whether it's the goal is, I mean, at the end of the day, right? The goal is post-revolution shit.
Mm-hmm.
Where on their way there is some electoral politics games that you're gonna have to be played. How do we interact and make sure that those electoral politics games actually like are moving the ball where we need them to go? Because the things that Pascal is talking about and laying out in the past to make sure that we have to fight against in the future is people actually fucking selling out, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's we think a lot of the people that just come blasting after AOC and the rest of them are or yeah, like they're sellouts. All that. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? These are people that can be worked with, but what they're shown can be worked with in a better way than the rest of the Democrats. So okay, then we grow that group and see how far we can move them, and if they can't be moved at a certain point, and then okay, we're bringing in new people. But also too, yeah, like really though, it's like you got to be able to know your fucking audience, right? So we had somebody come in to my channel earlier saying, "Oh, communism doesn't make any sense. Why am I supposed to pay for other people's this, that, and whatever?" And I just asked him a question. Let's go back to the grand day of America that you think, right? The 1990s. I asked, hey, let's say you work in a factory, a car factory, and you get to vote on whether your factory goes to another country or not. What do you vote for? If you work for a factory and you get to vote on whether the things that you make and how you make them poison the community around you, then like how? And then of course, right? The dude, he said, I hate this, communism, socialism, stupid. Of course I'd vote to keep my factory. Of course I'd vote to have working conditions that keeps my community safe. So it's about being able to explain these things or even just introduce them, right? Because we got to understand too, a lot of Americans don't understand what the hell socialism or communism is.
Real talk.
And so even not necessarily ignoring theory, but translating it in your head first, and then talking to that person about their material conditions in a Marxist or in a socialist or in a communist framework. That's I think that's where the left needs to get, is how do we start talking about proletariat versus bourgeoisie? How do we talk about that in hey, motherfucker, we need to make sure
that,
our
that
landlord
goes back to the Speak
landlord
American.
isn't fucking us over anymore,
That
right?
goes back to the Speak American thing. And I will say this: somebody said something on the chat about reading Marx and reading theory. I can actually say I actually do have quite a few leather-bound books. I just choose not to try to have them behind me so I can look so to fucking Pascal and ask him about a person, about a certain book, about theory. We talk about this shit a lot.
Don't make it seem like I'm the expert, bro. I'm still learning.
Your black ass knows a lot. And if honestly, and if you don't know, I definitely can go to Cedric. Like
Cedric definitely.
You got to have people in your crew that you can feel comfortable with saying, I don't know. This is confusing. Trying to come to all these conclusions on your own. Like, that's what I'm trying to get away from. Working in a fucking silo where it's just me against the world and I'm finna have the hottest take. I suck on social media. I don't know how to get a bunch of followers because I can't just sit around and say mean shit about what's hot. I don't want to waste my time saying mean shit. I'd rather waste my time cutting up clips for this show, talking to people for this show, reading a book, or playing with my badass kids. That's how I want to live my life. Not trying to figure out how to have the hottest fucking take on social media.
And you know, and even with that, right? You taking care of kids and you're around other parents, ask those other parents if taking care of kids is labor worth being paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need to start asking other people questions. We need to start talking about this stuff. Like, man, and like even if you bring up, and so this is where like I do way more politicking in my head than most. But if someone brings up Andrew Yang, I don't like Yang. But if someone brings up Andrew Yang, I'll get you there. If you think UBI is a good idea, hold my hand. We're going on a trip. I'll get you there. Yeah. It's about knowing where people are coming from. And it's about also understanding where we want to go. It's a whole lot easier to fucking meld whatever we got to say when you know the audience. But you know, I want to shout out to the comrade Kenny. He's a Twitch streamer. And that's the thing is like it's not necessarily about reading, not reading. It's about knowing and understanding. You just got to understand where you're coming from, understand the concepts and how to be able to deliver it, and how to be able to spread that shit. Because we're definitely not going anywhere if we just, you know, arguing amongst ourselves about what labels to use or any of those type of things, right? You know, like there needs to be that next step, and part of it is the communication thing, you know.
And that's why we do this show. That's why we try to add your show and our show. I don't know. We've been talking for hella long, and I know Marcus and Pascal. It's even later where them cats is, and I got a young child I have to hop on pop to for the 100th time.
Oh yeah, I was about to say because you're
asking a question about Jared Ball as if Jared. We all we invited Jared Ball to the show. He was supposed to come on Saturday, but he couldn't make it, and we're going to reschedule.
No, I wrote something back. We're all good. We don't have no beef. At the end of the day, you're not going to hear me say nothing really bad about anybody unless it's somebody I really would see in them streets and say something to their face.
That's not what happens in the pre-show, though.
The pre-show is different. There's a lot of words that get thrown around in the pre-show that will not be said on the real show that I try to keep myself from saying on the real show because my mama watches. And I can't. That's a chastising I can't take because I'm gonna get chastised.
It was interesting to watch, Harvey J Kaye get hot, man. He got hot.
I like that. He got fun. Because you know why? Because Jacqueline is. Look at me now. I'm talking shit. Some of the shows he goes on, they're not pushing buttons. You push that man's buttons. That's why I said you know that was a full ass fro at one point in time. That was a full ass shit talking afro at one point in time, and he was talking shit. Wrote a whole book about like Marxist Latin movements in Spanish. Because that's my mom. See, my mama said I can't say certain shit. So y'all saw it right there. My mama said it here. I put it up big. Just so you know. I can't say certain things because my mama is I'm finna get the business. I'm not trying to deal with that in my life right now.
Yeah. The sandal can travel far.
This is why. Where you at? Where you at? You hear that?
Yep. Phoenix rising.
Why aren't you sleep? You gonna tell people something on the chat? You gonna tell them good night? You gonna hit him with the camouflage jammies? Okay, he don't want to hit you with the camouflage jammies.
You can't see him.
His mama got him some camouflage jammies. I can't see him.
Yeah, he's probably walking in the background. We can't see him.
Yes, my mom is watching. I gotta watch my mouth. I can curse here and there, but I definitely can't say other words that Pascal and I know we can't say.
Don't get Pamela Davis mad, man. She might have to smack you in the mouth.
She will smack me in the mouth. She has smacked me in the mouth before. I have PTSD from my mother.
If you don't have PTSD, were you even parented?
We actually interviewed, it's going up Sunday. Sorry it's taking me so long. Well, it goes up Sunday. Audio podcast, Pascal and I, who never comes on the audio podcast with me. We interviewed Burden Stelly, who actually has a show with Jared Ball called The Last Dope Intellectual. And we interviewed The Last Dope Intellectual. And there's going to be the free show content. And we actually got some bonus content from Dr. Burden Stelly as well. So if you become a patron, you can hear the entire extra part of the interview. Why you gotta say real house shit, mama?
You broke your finger.
She's dropping dimes on you. She broke her finger.
God damn.
Why are you saying regular house shit?
Your mama broke her. She said she broke her finger beating you, boy.
Damn.
It's still messed up to this day from hitting me. Yeah. That's how hard.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Mama, you're not supposed to say in the house shit. All right, love you, mama. I'll see you tomorrow morning. I'm now, just because you got on here, I'm coming extra early. So make sure your behind is up. And Phoenix said sausage better be ready for him when he gets there.
God damn. Woo. This is it.
So you know about Pascal. So I don't know if people, because I've noticed all these podcasters now is gonna have a fucking wall of books behind them. Pascal actually does read a lot, and before we have people on the show, I usually have to read. We try to read their book or read as much of their book as possible. And Pascal actually does read a lot of people's books. So if you can look behind him, he doesn't even have a shelf because he's like, fuck a shelf. He just stacks the shit up. Do you see the book stack? Every so often you can see Pascal's book stack.
I see it over damn. Just done with it, toss it.
He just has stacks of books. Like,
stacks on stacks on stacks.
When he hears the term stacks, he thinks you mean stacks of like Walter Rodney text.
Racks on racks on racks.
Who is the next guest we have coming up on the show this weekend, man?
Marcus is coming on Saturday, and
as usual.
I think if we just did Marcus on Saturday, that'd be enough. But I'm starting to like trying to have a surprise person come in, so I'll try to find a surprise person. But I'm going to try to make the surprise person black.
Oh, just to end off Black History Month. Is it still going to be Black History Month?
Black History Month Saturday?
I celebrate to the 3rd of March. I'm not letting these motherfuckers give me no fucking fake ass 28-day month.
Oh,
got me to the 3rd, homie. To the 3rd.
Oh, damn.
Well, you know, it's funny because we had the really great foreign policy segment on Tuesday.
Ooh, that was fire.
We haven't had the opportunity to touch on the fact that, according to news today, Biden is dropping bombs on Syria.
Yeah.
the, you know.
Well, if Gene Bajlan is still in the chat, Gene, do you want to come on the show Saturday? And we'll talk some Middle East serious shit.
That was, by the way, if anyone hasn't watched that segment we did on foreign policy on Tuesday, I'd suggest you check it out. I thought that was one of the best foreign policy discussions that I've ever seen or participated in. We had 3 really good experts talking about from the Middle East, Russia, and China, and I was just impressed with the dialogue, man. It was some pretty fire content. If I have to say so myself. Then the Saturday before that, we had Margaret Kimberly with the 3 of us, and then Dylan Rodriguez came on, and that was good. So we've had a good week.
You can clean your house to that show.
Yeah,
your house to that show.
We had a good week of content, man, and I think February. Listen, we were discussing whether or not for Black History Month we were going to do kind of like an all kind of like Black themed show, and we just took it. We just played it by ear, and I still think that the content we had was excellent. I look forward to what we're going to be pulling out for March. We're going to try to get Jared Ball.
I think Dr. Asia Leeds is coming. It's going to be our first Tuesday show in March, and she is a scholar of the Black diaspora in Central and South America.
That sounds good. I think we're trying to get Adolph Reed and Preston Smith.
Yeah, Preston Smith was supposed to be on the show tonight with Dr. Yeah. Who's on your bed?
Jason having fatherhood duty.
Yeah. But no, yeah. So I mean, it's about a few hours ago. Biden authorized airstrike. At first, they just said it was facilities from Iranian-backed militia. But I mean, I'm actually definitely going to have to watch everything from Tuesday night because, yeah, between Iran, Russia, and China, you know, a few bombs in the middle of the desert can cause a whole lot of issues. So yeah, we'll see how this plays out. But I'd
like to see where it goes. But yeah, someone said that they enjoyed our Haiti episode when we had Daoud Andre. That was a good episode too. So we're trying to put out the content, man. I think that the content has been stellar. Marcus, your participation has been quite appreciated. I think you definitely bring an interesting perspective. Former War on Terror vet, Marine Corps, and all that good stuff.
I mean, I gotta say, I just appreciate being in the room. Oh dang! Look at this little fire.
Gene is saying that it was the Syria hit was not a major hit, but symbolic.
Yeah. No, and that's like the thing that like makes me question is like, I mean, Biden had a phone call with Mohammed bin Salman, who's the king of Saudi Arabia, earlier today. Specifically talked about Iranian, proxy militias. You've got the fact that just yesterday, I think there was people talking about the military budget having to be decreased or stay the same. Like that's the most terrible thing. And so what is Joe Biden gonna be able to do to make sure Raytheon, who his defense secretary is on the board of, how to make sure those stocks numbers keep rising. But yeah, and also too, at the end of the day, good old fashioned white supremacy and imperialism is a good reason to drop a bomb on anything. So yeah, there's a few different ways, or reasons, or all of them. But
so Marcus, we're gonna have you on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, so Saturday, Marcus, Jean Bajlan. Should we ask Derek to come on too? Derek Varn. I'm waiting for Jean to comment. He hasn't commented. But we don't need Derek's ass. That's gonna fuck it up. Derek's probably watching this, gonna talk some shit to me tonight. I gotta get a message from him. But I think it was a good show. We went longer than I thought. I thought we were going to get an hour out of it, but we got 2 hours. We made Harvey J Kaye holler, and now he's all fired up, walking around his house, yelling at furniture like George Jefferson. Somebody said, "Where's Torre at?" Oh, you want to bring Cuba and Maria back? Would you want to bring Cuba and Maria back, Pascal, for Saturday?
At some point, I don't know. Can we get them for this on this short notice?
He says Pascal's call.
I mean, I wouldn't mind having them on. I was just wondering if we talked about AFRICOM on the last episode. We haven't had an episode dedicated to AFRICOM, but we did have a pretty extensive conversation about AFRICOM in our foreign policy conversation.
It's one of my favorite things to bring up is AFRICOM, especially when talking to libs, especially because although signed into law under George Bush, it was a complete build up and set in by Barack Obama. So that's a good little nugget of knowledge.
Okay, I just got told that my son has to watch Nut Job. Have you guys seen that? Is it animated?
Netflix something?
It's on Netflix. It came out in like 2012, 2014. But he has to watch it, and he dances. He was falling asleep, and when the Gundam Style song came on, the little motherfucker got up and started dancing and then shut it back down. So part of me has to watch him do that because I think it's funny as shit.
Well, then I think we should take the opportunity to, call it a night. We've definitely gone over time.
We did go over time. So, Doug, we can't get this episode. Tuesday's fine. But all right, thank you, guys. Thank you, Marcus, for coming in and raiding the show. I wish I had the power to do something like that for you. The only thing I can do is make really cool clips of the things that you say, and then you can promote it on your show as you being like this cool dude with your dreads. your winning smile.
I appreciate it. Yeah. No, I'm honestly, I appreciate just being here and being able to like talk with brilliant minds and learn. Yeah, Saturday.
One thing I'll say about the studio, living in the studio, one of the greatest things about it was that you could walk out of your door at any time of the day or night and have a conversation like this with a Boots Riley or with some other, like, for me, a legendary musical figure that would come in and just kind of build with you. So the fact that you guys are down to do this is huge for me because it's definitely a feeling of home. Where I can't have it at that place anymore. But and I think people do enjoy it, the spontaneity of being like, hey, look who's on the show.
Guess who's coming in?
Yeah, but that was fun, man. Thank you for doing that, Marcus. Pascal, I'll talk to you tomorrow, as usual.
As usual.
And if I haven't said it, I love y'all, brothers. I appreciate y'all, brothers.
Always.
Love you too, man. Love this.
Looking forward to Saturday.
Oh, I did want to say real quick,
shout it out.
Me and Jason started our show on Tuesdays before Black History Month started. We started it the last week in January because this is not a Black History Month thing. This shit is just happened to start close to Black History Month. All right.
What's your problem with Black History Month?
I just don't like the whole, oh, hey, it's Pride Month, so everything's rainbow. Oh, it's Black History Month, so everything got a black power fist and everything blackly black. Like, it's great. I'm not down on the history, but this wasn't just like a Black History Month thing.
That was originally the plan. We were going to make this show so black. It was just gonna be black people everywhere, just black for no reason. We was gonna have a pastor on here, with a tambourine in one hand and a collection plate in the other.
Someone playing a steel drum in the back.
We're gonna have all kind of black people, and then none of them got back to us because white people put them on their show first.
Yeah. All right, we need to get the fuck off this show.
So if you ever go like, why don't you have and insert this black person here, like turn on a white person's show, and then that's why.
Yeah, he's on Jimmy Kimmel right now.
Jimmy Kimmel right now.
Whoever you're thinking about, they're on Jimmy Kimmel.
So then we just went the whole opposite route and tried to have as many white people as possible.
That's not true.
Harvey J Kaye is a good white person. He's okay.
He's a good white person.
He's a good white person. He's a good white person.
Do we have any white people this month?
Me?
Oh, Cuba.
Oh.
Cuba's white.
What about the content, man? What about the content?
The white content? There's Dr. Umar. If we have Dr. Umar on the show, just know at that point, I'm taking the bag. I just want you to know that. Just know at that point, the bag has been taken. Pascal's shirts are going to get a little nicer.
Oh, really?
My background is going to be, there's a bigger amp behind me. Just know when Umar's on the show, we have officially taken the bag. That's all
I'm gonna have a diamond frame around this paper ass bullshit.
The lighting looks so good. Yeah, we took the bag. So, Dr. Umar, tell us more about white supremacy.
Yeah.
Dr. Umar, tell us more about how everyone's African. Somebody in my family posted that bullshit. He said that all the Chinese people is black.
Y'all are already coming for people, man. Already coming for people, man.
Yeah. He's in Philly. He is not getting on a plane to come see me. But if so, how you doing? Didn't he have a school where he'll like ungay your son?
Oh,
On that note,
I'm happy I don't know who that is.
Jason will have Farrakhan next year for BLM. Again, if you see Farrakhan on the show,
Definitely took
the bag. Took the bag.
The bag took me.
What'd you say, Pascal?
Yeah, I mean, there might be some interesting questions to ask Calypso Louis Farrakhan, man. There might be some interesting questions.
Look, I'm not trying to ask that. I'm not trying to talk to that brother.
Why
That's
not, man?
Pascal solo show. You can have the solo show with Ferry.
Yeah.
Ferry can. You and Lulu can have a show. You can interrogate the Million Man March. You can ask him what really happened with Malcolm. You can ask him all them questions. I'm not trying to talk to that brother.
Why
You
not,
don't
man?
talk to me, no way.
Man, because if you talk to Farrakhan, then you're canceled for the rest of your life in white people's eyes.
Oh, white people got
come
mad
on.
at me a long time ago.
You might be, but like that seems like if you want to try to buy a car or house, you know.
Oh yeah, my credit is
Then-
bad, Marcus.
Then like they're gonna just put like denied and just show the picture of you and Farrakhan standing next to each other. Like nope.
Doesn't mean it doesn't mean who says it can't be a critical interview, man. Mike Wallace interviewed Louis Farrakhan.
That's
What you
Mike
talking about?
Wallace white ass, not me. I'm not trying to talk to Louis Farrakhan. Mike Wallace can talk to Louis Farrakhan. Oh, I
Why are
gotta
you
go.
afraid of the minister, man? Why are you afraid of the minister, man?
Look, now you got Phoenix crying. You said Farrakhan 3 times. You know to make a baby cry.
I'll do the show for you, Pascal. When you get Farrakhan, I'll do the show with you. I'll do the show.
All right, I gotta go because you hear them tears.
Yeah, them are real.
Later, man.
That's how you know this show is real too. Only a real show like this, you keep your baby crying in the background. Watch CPS come knocking on the door.
Now it's the blackest show.
Now it's the
I should have said that shit.
All right, man. I love y'all. Thank you, everybody. If you haven't done it, become a patron, and then I can get a sound wall so you don't have to know that I do this shit right next to my kids' room.
Hit subscribe, like, and share.